5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Robert O'Connor and you're listening to Easy Breezy. My new single, You Found Me, is out on March 30th.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, good.
Good. So we're here to talk to you about your brand new single, You Found Me, released March 30th, correct?
That's right, yeah. Internationally.
Yeah, man, it's actually a great story behind the song, man. Why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about how the song came about?
Yeah, so this is a little bit different than anything I've done before because it's not kind of, I suppose, a relationship type song or a song that I kind of wrote about anyone else. This is completely about myself and about the place that I was at in my life a couple of years ago, and I suppose even now. It's basically more about the journey that I've been on while I've been away from the music industry because, we all obviously have ups and downs professionally, and, for me, I was off doing other jobs and, not particularly content with what I was doing. And it took for, I suppose, other people, strangers, to kind of come to me and say, why don't you give this a go again? And that, that's the story for me. But I hope other people will interpret it in their own way as well.
Yeah. And when you say reinventing yourself, because to me it wasn't that long, but for some people it was maybe a little longer. What made you decide to actually go that route? Because even listening to some of your earlier music, such as, let's say, Older, I really enjoy that song, for example.
Thanks.
And you got a few other ones. So, did your sound change at all? Do you say?
I think that it changed based on. I think that there's always kind of, the voice that ties everything together, and I always like to think that you're on a journey with your listeners as well, and that that they'll invest in previous music. So it's great to hear that you've listened to previous tracks, because some people that are just coming on board with this single wouldn't have listened to anything from before. So I don't think that the sound has changed dramatically. I think that my voice has adjusted over the years, and I think I learned how to use my voice a little bit differently this time on this record, just because of the producer that I was working with kind of pushed me a little bit more, which is what I was looking for, because I think you can go with somebody who's a yes man, and you can go in there and do what you do, in a couple of takes, and not get anything different or not get the best out of yourself. Whereas this guy, much like the guy who produced my very first single, pushed, and it's uncomfortable. But
now, are you talking? Now, when you say this guy, are you referring to Stewart?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
You've done research. So what happened with Stewart was that I reached out to a guy called Steve Hogan, who produced, I think, 4 songs on my first album, including all the singles that were released from that record. And I hadn't seen or spoken to Steve in 10 years. Now, I'd obviously done other projects musically with other people in the meantime, but
I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm curious. When you and Steve was working on your first project, where was this at?
This was in Dublin as well. This was in Steve's studio in Dublin.
In Dublin, okay. I thought I read it, because, like I said, I got the bio and I thought I read it, but I just want to make sure for listeners' purposes.
Yeah, everything I've recorded has been, the only tracks that were recorded outside of Dublin, where I did sort of half the album in Amsterdam. Wow. That was with a different producer again. But just getting back to Steve, when I decided to do this again, and that I was going to, to be honest, these tracks were written a couple of years ago, but it's only now that I've gotten around to doing it, aligning professional and personal life and all the rest of it, and financial, and now is the first opportunity that I've kind of had to do it. But I reached out to Steve because I wanted to work with somebody who I felt had a little bit of a understanding of my background and what I had done before. But basically, in the 10 years since I've worked with him, he's packed up his studio, and he's working predominantly now as a session drummer, and he plays with all the big artists over here, and he's working every night of the week, whether it's TV shows or gigs or launches or whatever it is. But he said to me that he would like to co-produce and we would use another studio. And he said, I know exactly the guy that you need, because I had sent him a bunch of tracks that I had been listening to, that I was inspired by. And, you know, I had a particular idea of the direction I wanted to go in. I didn't want to just go in there and kind of wing it this time. So he said, this guy is who you need to work with, and that was Stuart Gray. And Stuart's actually worked with people coming over from Nashville as well, which I thought was crazy, because I was listening to a lot of kind of American style country and more modern, like urban country and things like that.
Right.
So when I heard that, I thought, okay, great, because the idea of working with somebody new altogether wasn't that appealing to me, because I'd got in meetings with other people that were new, and it didn't go particularly well, because, you know, I don't think that they wanted to make demos. Everything was very slow, whereas I wanted to get in and hit the ground running like I'd always done before, because even though, you know, I'm an unknown artist to most, I'm not brand new, so there's not the idea of starting from scratch, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how I met Stuart, and from there on in, I mean, it all happened really, really quickly. I met him in December. We did literally 2 days before Christmas of writing the tracks, just the whole putting the structure together, and then literally I think 2 afternoons in January for vocals, and everything else was mixing. And like, Stuart plays pretty much everything on the record except for drums and percussion, which Steve plays. So this was a 3-man band essentially, and there was no session guys. There was no one else coming in and doing additional writing or additional production. It was a very small crew.
Got you. And how did let's just say Steve react to your vocals once you guys got back up? Because I know you said you reinvented yourself. How did he see you at that point? I know he recommended Stuart.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you had a earlier vision earlier in your career, and maybe I'm not sure if the vision changed, but when you reinvent yourself, I'm sure something's going to change. So how did he take that changing?
I mean, I think Steve and I had kind of fell out of contact, just from the point of view of, like a lot of artists, each record you might go to a different producer. And the last project that I worked on, I started working towards more electronic sounds, and with the single Too Late was an out-and-out commercial dance track. So I'd completely removed myself from the landscape of you know, working with those types of producers and those types of bands. So that was a reinvention of sorts. But in a sense, what I'm doing now is more similar to what I was doing in the beginning, just, I suppose, you know, a more mature version, or you know, as I said, your voice matures and changes and drops in register. But Steve really didn't think that all that much had changed at all, I think. And it felt like we were taking up 2 years later to record another record. It didn't feel like, you know, a decade. Yeah,
it doesn't sound like it either. The writing, it definitely sounds similar from your earlier works, and it sounds good. It doesn't sound like a reinvention in a bad way, I guess you could say, to me. I keep remembering the songs. It's very catchy. Is that something that you try to do? Because I seen that you said that when it came to the chorus, you wanted to just slam it home.
Yeah, actually, that was more for me this time around. The funny thing is, when I went into the studio, Stuart said to me, like, we had a bit of a moment with You Found Me where the original version that I recorded was basically me going in with this vocal, melody and lyric formed in one, which is often the way it kind of happens for me, is that I just kind of get this idea and I try to write the song very quickly, because a lot of the time if I put it down, you know, it never ends up finished. So if I feel like I'm onto something, I'm just going to keep going, and it could be 10 or 15 minutes, or it could be less. Yeah. And you know, and it's done, lyric, vocal, melody, all of the rest. So I went in, sang it as I thought it should be, and I was listening to a lot of you know, 80s kind of bands, and not even 90s bands as well. And I liked the idea of it being like the verses being quite dark and mysterious, and then the chorus originally was more like that as well. And then Steve, I think it was, felt, he wasn't hearing the chorus, or he felt like something was off. So we slowed the track right down, and we made it much more sinister, and it sounded like something you'd hear in like a HBO series or something like that. It was really interesting, and it was quite dark, but it was very uncommercial, and I just kept longing for the original version that I had gone in and sang on the first day. And when we went back in the new year to actually start recording, we should have been recording the more down-tempo version, which we agreed upon before Christmas. But I literally went in and Stuart said, "You're not happy, are you?" And I said, "It just doesn't feel right." And I said, I don't feel like after 4 or 5 years out, I can go back out there with something so low key. I said, I want, for it to be an impact. And then I think from there on in, we both were thinking about making an impact with this song, because it was always going to be the first single. So with the chorus, there was originally, what's the pre-chorus now was originally sort of the chorus. And Stuart said, I think it needs to go up and it needs something else. And I thought, I was at this Coldplay concert last summer in Dublin, and I remember thinking about their choruses, that they just really lift the roof, and it might not be anything complicated. It's usually something quite simple lyrically. And so I thought, I never do this, but I'm going to do something really, kind of straight, like the that's in there, and the just repeating, more repetitive, and just try to create a sort of Coldplay moment. I was referring to it as that sort of stadium moment, that the part of the song that everybody really wakes up for. So once that was done, I think in some ways I would say, going back to what you said earlier about how's the music changed, I would say that the chorus is a lot more distinctive, and it's a lot less subtle. It's just a bit more in your face this time, and that was unintentional. It just sort of, when Stuart said go in and try something, it was literally the first thing that I tried, and he said that's it.
That's cool, man. I got 2 more questions.
Sure.
One question is, when making the record, what's one thing in the studio that you couldn't go without?
That I can go without? Well, I definitely can't go without my main man Stuart, and I can't go without a producer, because I'm not adept at hands-on production. I'm very vocal when it comes to what I want, but I would say the obvious thing to say is definitely a great producer, somebody that you can connect with, and that you feel is, you're being heard, that you feel is listening to you genuinely, and not just doing what they want to do.
Okay, you like a good set of ears in the studio with you.
Like a really good set. And you know what I think as well, what I've realised, having worked with people who are more yes men, as I call them, I think it's important for me to have someone who's got equally strong opinions to me, so that they can there can be a bit of push and pull there, and we can end up getting what's best for the song, as opposed to just, saying, yeah, it's great, it's done, that's perfect, fine. Right. And then, I like somebody who really cares about it. Like Stuart spent weeks tweaking the track. I was done for ages in the studio, and then there were little things that we were hearing, like Steve, we had a WhatsApp group between the 3 of us, and Steve was hearing little things that he wanted changed, as a co-producer, that maybe I didn't hear. And so it's crazy how long you can spend mixing, but ultimately I think we got it all together pretty quickly, given that this track was only put together in January, and the second single as well was put together in that same week.
Cool. My last question here, Rob. What if you could describe the single You Found Me, maybe in a sentence or 2, just something short? How would you describe the song alone? So the listeners can actually appreciate it. How would you describe the song?
I would say that it's nostalgic and hopeful.
You broke up a little bit there, Robert. You still there with me?
Yeah, I would say it's very nostalgic, and it definitely is, both in terms of its lyrics, it's nostalgic, and lyrically I think it's quite hopeful as well. Like, even though the verses there's a bittersweet sort of feeling to it, so I like that idea of, a straight happy song or a straight sad song. There's definitely a bittersweet aspect to it. But I think ultimately, if I could use a word to describe it, it would be that it's nostalgic. And what's come back from a lot of people is they think there's kind of, people are mentioning bands like R.E.M. and Plec, which are obviously massive names, but it's just that idea of it doesn't necessarily sound like something you would expect to hear on pop chart right now.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Robert O'Connell.